people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. We now know who Heather Hardy's going to be fighting later on this month in New York City. She's going to be taking on veteran journeywoman Kalista Silgado. Very familiar face, very familiar fighter. Been in there with a lot of familiar faces and fighters. Been beaten by them. And this is a more ideal opponent option for Heather Hardy.
I mean, yeah, you know, Kalista's about 6 years younger than Heather, but Kalista's got losses in the double digits.
She's that kind of fighter, that kind of opponent. She's got losses in the double digits, whereas Heather, 24 fights, she's only ever lost 2 times, and both times those losses were to quality fighters, quality operators.
So Heather Hardy's once again trying to rebound off a loss.
Last year, she attempted to rebound off the Amanda Serrano loss with a fight against Jessica Camara. There was over a year's time in between the Serrano fight and the Camara fight. She fought Amanda Serrano in September of 2019, sat out all of 2020, sat out for over a year, comes back in May of the following year, last year, and she took on Jessica Camara, perhaps a bit too much, too soon for a fighter.
Yeah, that was a little bit too ambitious of Heather.
She lost that fight, and she's attempting to rebound off that loss here and now with Kalista Silgado, who I reiterate is a more ideal opponent choice for a fighter, especially an aging fighter, on the rebound in what is being billed as a lightweight contest. Lightweight, that's 135 pounds. That's where Katie Taylor still reigns as that division's undisputed champion. And because this is a lightweight contest, you get the sense that Heather may be angling for a Katie Taylor fight. She wants to get herself back in the winner's bracket, maybe win 1 or 2 more fights like this and position
herself to maybe challenge Katie Taylor.
Because if you are campaigning at lightweight, there are no other alphabet titles, no major ones to win. Katie Taylor has them all, so she's the main target for anyone campaigning in today's lightweight division. I wonder if she's not a day late and a dollar short pursuing a Katie Taylor fight, as Katie Taylor has been there and done that with some of the most notable names in the entire sport. Jessica McCaskill, Natasha Jonas, Delphine Persoon, more recently, Amanda Serrano. She's been there and done that.
There's not a whole lot left for Katie Taylor to accomplish when you think about it.
Not a whole lot. She's already made history as an Olympian, as a professional, and what names are often tacked on to Katie Taylor's name now are very big names and big fights, like an Amanda Serrano rematch. A lot of people are holding out hope that there will be a second fight. Perhaps a Chris Cyborg or Holly Holm crossover boxing versus MMA fight.
Katie's supposed to be taking on Argentina's own Karen Carbajal at the end of this month, on the 29th.
A respectable opponent choice, though on the face of it, it does read like a keep busy fight. A prelude until such a time as Katie Taylor can secure a bigger name for a bigger fight and a better opponent. I don't know how long it might take Heather, assuming she's pursuing a Taylor fight, I don't know how long it might take Heather to get such an opportunity on the premise that she's angling for a Taylor fight.
And she might be, because she's campaigning as a lightweight. I don't think she can make featherweight anymore.
Perhaps making super featherweight would be more doable for Heather Hardy, though why try to make super featherweight when you're right there at lightweight with the biggest name in the sport of women's boxing that can get you the most bang for your buck? I feel like she's pursuing a Taylor fight, but I just don't know. In any event, she's going to be taking on Kalista Silgado.
Kalista's a scrapper, mid-range to inside fighter.
And so is Heather Hardy. Heather Hardy's bread and butter has always been volume punching, mid-range to inside fighting, and she's tough. She can take a hard shot. She went the distance with Amanda Serrano.
Defense really ain't Heather Hardy's speciality. She's an offensively minded fighter. That's what she is.
So later on this month, I am expecting a brawl. I am expecting a mid-range to inside phone booth fight between Heather Hardy and Kalista Silgado. And because Heather Hardy's never really been a big puncher,
I don't get the sense she's going to knock Kalista Silgado out. Power has never been Heather's calling card. Volume, activity.
That's her signature. Here, at 40 years old, she has to win this fight. If you've reached a point in your career to where you can't make it past the Kalista Silgado, it may be time to hang them up.
That's a harsh reality, but that's the truth.
This is a must-win fight for Heather Hardy. If she can't make it past Kalista, chances are she won't make it past anyone.
Look for this October 13th at Sony Hall, Times Square, New York.
In other news, in my previous video, we talked about the upcoming top-ranked debut for Senicia Estriada, who will be servicing as the co-main event to the main event, Janibek Alimkanolai versus Denzel Bentley, the UK's own Denzel Bentley. A fight that's getting mixed reviews because when you see a fighter, a champion now,
when you see a guy like Janibek, that kind of firepower, that kind of ability, and that kind of ceiling,
naturally, you want to see him in the ring with the best guys around. The problem is the best guys around don't want nothing to do with him. You know, Jermall Charlo, this division's WBC champion, he hasn't even fought this year.
Not that it matters, because even if he did, he's over there on PBC Island. He's not going to unify titles with a top-ranked fighter.
Gennady Golovkin, this division's only unified champion and the biggest name at this weight.
I mean, he's not going to take on a high-risk, low-reward guy like Janibek Alimkanolai, not even for a unification match, I don't think.
Gennady couldn't be bothered to unify titles with his matchroom stablemate, Demetrius Andrade, who's a little bit more well-known than Janibek. So if he didn't want to unify with him, you think he's going to want to unify with Janibek?
Oh, of course not.
I'd love to be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. When it comes to Demetrius, well, ideally, Demetrius would have defended his WBO title against Janibek, but he chose to throw it in the air, vacate it. Now, who knows what he's going to do, because he's not fighting Janibek, and he doesn't appear to be fighting Zach Parker either.
That's what the plan was supposed to be. Wasn't going to defend the title against Janibek because he was going to move up in weight and pursue interim status in a Zach Parker fight, and that became a clusterfuck.
So the way it breaks down, no Jermall Charlo, no Gennady Golovkin, no Demetrius Andrade, no Jaime Munguia.
No way. Golden Boy didn't want to risk putting him in the ring with Jermall Charlo. You think they're going to put him in the ring with this guy over there at Top Rank?
Doesn't happen. Chris Eubank Jr., one of the more notoriable fighters at this weight, one of the more familiar faces, he's fighting Conor Benn this weekend.
There's really nobody for Janibek to fight.
So how could I complain that he's set to share the ring with Denzel Bentley? Denzel Bentley, whose lone defeat came at the hands of Felix Cash.
Felix stopped him about 3 or 4 fights ago. That was a domestic level scrap of unbeaten fighters.
Whereas this is world level. This is a world title fight.
Janibek saw action 2 times last year. This will be his 2nd fight of this year.
Denzel Bentley, he saw action 2 times last year, and he's already seen action 2 times this year. This will be his 3rd fight in the year of 2022. He has since rebounded off that knockout loss to Felix Cash in the 3rd round of their fight.
He's fought 3 times since then. 2 out of 3 fights he won by way of knockout.
Sporting a professional record of 17 wins, 1 loss with 1 draw, 14 knockouts, 14 of them. On some level, Denzel Bentley, he can punch, even if he doesn't exhibit the same ceiling as a Janibek Alimkanolai.
Seems to have power, some power on some level.
Whereas Janibek Alimkanolai, he sports a professional record, an unblemished one. 12 wins, no losses, no draws, 8 knockouts.
I can't complain that Janibek is making his first title defense against Denzel Bentley because there's nobody else out there.
Nobody willing. To them, even with a belt, Janibek Alimkanolai is a high-risk, low-reward opponent. If it's not that, it's the politics of boxing. The fact that the middleweight division here today, it stands divided between Top Rank and the PBC.
Matchroom to some degree.
I'd say the last 4, maybe 5 years, the middleweight division has stagnated. There are few fighters, very few fighters, exhibiting the same ceiling, viciousness of a Janibek Alimkanolai. He really is one of the more promising fighters at this weight, but in some ways he seems like he's the only promising, unbeaten up-and-comer, now champion.
You know, for those that are critical of this fight, wondering if they couldn't find someone better for Janibek to fight,
the answer is no. No, they couldn't. This is bigger than the matchmaking at Top Rank, bigger than Janibek. This is about the state of the middleweight division and how it has stagnated, cooled off the last few years.
And there's not a whole lot that either Janibek or the matchmakers at Top Rank, there's not a lot they can do about that.
When you think about the situation as a whole, how could you complain? Who would you recommend? Who else is out there?
Who's willing?
So no, I take no issue with the upcoming Denzel Bentley fight. It's as good a fight as any other fight happening at middleweight. It's as good a fight as you can hope to make given the state of this division. No complaints from me. Keep the guy busy, keep the guy active, get him out there. It's the least you can do. In other news, Oscar De La Hoya, the former promoter of Canelo Alvarez, posted this to his Instagram stories. He was asked, huge fights coming up for Golden Boy. Let's talk Zurdo, Ryan, Munguia, and Ortiz, Benavidez versus Canelo. To which Oscar responded, Canelo will never fight him. He's too young and talented. Oscar has fast made it a habit to rib Canelo Alvarez whenever he can. And the reason for it is obvious. It's because Canelo left him, and now that he's gone, Golden Boy Promotions hasn't really been able to rebound or fill the void that Canelo Alvarez left behind. So all Oscar can do is be bitter about it.
Oscar's got a history of pettiness, a history of petty behavior. For years we saw him ribbing Floyd.
He never got over dropping that decision to Floyd Mayweather, and he took shots at that guy, for a long time. Many years. He appears to be doing that with Canelo Alvarez now.
Given how catty Oscar can be sometimes, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him start taking shots at Sinisi Estrada for leaving Golden Boy.
Because if he's mad at Canelo, if he's mad at anything, he's mad at that. He's mad that he left him. But what did you expect? You backdoored that guy. You made promises on his behalf that he wasn't on board with. You made promises to DAZN.
Promises to DAZN that were in violation of your initial agreement with Canelo Alvarez.
You did it to yourself. You violated his trust. That's what you did.
Do you think that Oscar De La Hoya would be saying stuff like this if he was still in the Canelo Alvarez business? If he were still promoting him?
And do you think that he doesn't wish that Canelo would come back? That he could continue to promote his fights? Him still being the cash cow of boxing, the guy that draws the biggest crowd in this country, generates the most money. You think Oscar isn't up late at night, hoping, praying, wishing that Canelo Alvarez would come back? You think he's not?
If Canelo Alvarez, out of his own mouth, said tomorrow he wants to go back to Golden Boy, you don't think Oscar would welcome him back with open arms?
Propping up David Benavidez has become all the rage in some circles, small ones, mostly ones that are very critical of Canelo Alvarez. And that's what Oscar's doing here. He's ribbing that guy and using David Benavidez.
All of a sudden, everybody loves David Benavidez. All of a sudden.
In truth, I myself wouldn't mind seeing Canelo take on David Benavidez. The disconnect is that he's someone special, someone that stands out from the others when he really doesn't. He's got the same kind of paper-thin resume that the rest of these guys have got.
Standing online, single file, with his hands out, just like everybody else.
I'm not against Canelo Alvarez fighting David Benavidez, though I have certain questions. If Canelo Alvarez were to make an offer to David Benavidez to cross over to the Matchroom and DAZN side of things for that fight with him, would David Benavidez cross over, or would he and his handlers make things difficult? Because that's the situation that we saw with Caleb Plant. DAZN made an offer for Caleb to cross over to their side of things, and he didn't want to do that.
David ain't in no position to play hardball with anybody. He'd be lucky if he could get a Jermall Charlo fight at this point.
Let alone a Canelo Alvarez fight. It's neither here or there anyway, because Canelo may be taking a bit of time off, and I think he needs it.
All his critics like Oscar and David's father, all these people, they can sit in a circle jerking each other off if it makes them feel better.
Doesn't change anything. They're all still at the mercy of Canelo Alvarez.
Complain till you're blue in the face. It's not going to change anything.
And finally, just in keeping with the theme of all things super middleweight, Edgar Berlanga views Jaime Manguia as a possible opponent.
In the article, Edgar talked about some potential fights and some of the players at 168 pounds.
David Benavidez was mentioned, but
David's with Al Heyman. He's not going anywhere to fight anybody else's fighters on their platform.
For what it's worth, I think David Benavidez would kick Edgar Berlanga's ass. I think here and now, compared to Edgar, David is a more developed fighter. Better still, you've got Jaime Munguia on the radar too, continued Berlanga. I know he fights at 160, but he can probably move up and we can get a crazy fight going and make money. At the end of the day, it's about the bag. Besides legacy, we've got families to feed. Although Berlanga is initially correct when discussing the weight class in which Munguia currently campaigns, the former 154-pound titleist could be on his way to crashing Berlanga's division. After spending roughly 2.5 years squeezing down his enormous frame to the 160-pound limit, Munguia handed his body a reprieve in the form of a 165-pound catchweight bout against Jimmy Kelly. Though unexpected, Munguia's decision to forego his time at 160 pounds proved to be a sagacious one. In his first fight above 160 pounds, the former junior middleweight belt holder performed just fine, registering a 5th-round stoppage victory, bearing in mind his physique and his ability to carry his pernicious knockout power. Berlanga is convinced that Munguia will make the permanent move to 168 pounds in the near future, thus facilitating their in-the-ring meeting. He's a big boy. He's not a little guy. I seen him move up to 168, especially like if it's a big money fight with me and him, and he knows it's serious. I'm up for it. And yeah, you know, there would be some money in association with the Berlonga versus Munguia fight, the whole Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry, but I'm not sure that Jaime is all the way done at 160 pounds because Gennady Golovkin's still down there, you know, and he still holds at least 2 alphabet titles. While he may be under orders to satisfy his mandatory challenger, Ruslan de Lara, he could always surrender that belt to Lara.
Surrender the WBA title to Lara while you defend the IBF title
against Munguia. There's more money in a Munguia fight than a Lara fight.
I'm not against either fight, by the way. If Gennady were to decide to defend his WBA title against Lara, I like that fight as well. Battle of the old guys.
But let's not lose focus here. The focus of this conversation is what could impede a Munguia versus Berlanga fight. And the option of facing an aging Gennady Golovkin, an aging champion at super middleweight, that might be enough to get Jaime to go back down there.
More money, the fight would have more of a profile, and he'd get to fight for a world title.
I think Golden Boy would be receptive to making such a fight for Jaime based on what Gennady showed us in the 3rd Canelo Alvarez fight.
It's just something to think about. Something that might bring Jaime back to middleweight.
That could. That would. And Golovkin being a network and promotional free agent, he's free to do business with just about anybody. Though it would be up to Golden Boy Promotions to do the deal. I don't think there'd be any involvement from Matchroom. Gennady's not with them anymore.
So barring a Munguia fight, what else is out there for Edgar?
Well, very recently, Edgar Berlanga took to his social media and expressed some interest in facing Matchroom's own John Ryder. John Ryder is a very experienced guy. A lot of people feel he arguably beat Callum Smith. He's coming off that win over Danny Jacobs, contentious win that it might be. He's got it in the record books.
John Ryder would be a step up in competition from Steve Rolls, a step up in competition from Romer Angulo.
Romer, who I don't even really think Edgar beat, not legitimately. They might have given him the decision, but I don't think he deserved it. Berlanga versus Ryder is an interesting enough, intriguing enough fight that I'm not against it.
So make the fight.